Today we're exploring the fascinating Islamic and scientific perspective on dogs, really unraveling that nuanced relationship between sacred law and biological facts. Imagine this scenario for a second. You're walking alone at night and suddenly a dog appears right in front of you. Some folks might immediately step back and say, whoa, dogs are impure, but then others might jump in and counter with, wait a minute, dogs are actually mentioned favorably in the Qur'an. It creates a real moment of confusion, doesn't it? So which perspective is actually true? Well, we are going to dive into this exact topic today through the lens of both authentic Islamic scholarship and modern science. And honestly, by the end of our time together, you might just see these animals in a completely different light.
So let's dive right into this major paradox. If people say dogs are completely impure, why does the Quran mention them so favorably? It's a super valid question. I mean, if an animal is supposedly cursed or just entirely hated, why would Allah allow Muslims to use trained hunting dogs? Why would the religious texts contain such specific, almost protective narratives regarding them? To really get the rule, we first have to understand the profound respect the texts give to the creature itself.
And this is brilliantly illustrated right in Surah Al-Kahf, where a dog is literally immortalized alongside righteous believers. We know the story. Over 2,000 years ago, a group of young believers fled their city to protect their faith, hiding out in a cave where Allah calls them to sleep for many years. But here's the thing, they weren't alone. As the Qur'an specifically points out, and their dog stretched its forelegs at the entrance of the cave. The famous scholar Imam al-Qurtubi noted something incredibly beautiful about this. He explained that the dog actually gained honor through its companionship with these righteous people. The religious text permanently preserved the memory of this dog. That clearly shows the animal itself is absolutely not fundamentally evil or cursed. Now, shifting gears for a second to look at how this builds into their amazing biology, the contrast between our physical design and theirs is just staggering. We humans walk around with about 5 to 6 million smell receptors. Sounds like a lot, right? But dogs, they possess up to 300 million. That is an absolute superpower. It allows them to detect scents we can't even fathom. And look at their hearing limit, 65,000 hertz compared to our 20,000 hertz. They hear the world entirely differently, picking up frequencies long before we even realize anything is happening. They even have unique biological cooling systems, relying on panting to evaporate moisture from their tongues instead of sweating like we do. It is just a masterful, deliberate, biological design. And it goes way beyond just their senses. Research from Harvard and Duke shows dogs possess remarkable intelligence, which makes them incredibly useful for hunting, rescue, and medical assistance, all of which Islam explicitly permits, by the way. These aren't just instinct-driven machines. They understand human gestures, they learn wide vocabularies, they recognize our subtle emotional shifts, and they absolutely thrive on complex routines. This is exactly why the Qur'an in Surah Al-Ma'idah explicitly permits the use of trained hunting animals. Allah created them with these brilliant capabilities, and we utilize them today for detecting explosives, finding missing people, and even identifying medical conditions. Moving right along to Section 1, Boundaries and Purity, the Saliva Rule. Okay, so now we shift from the dog's honor and utility over to the strict boundaries regarding purity and hygiene. Because let's face it, this is where the confusion usually starts for folks. We've established that dogs are remarkably designed, highly intelligent, and honored in scriptural history. So why on earth are there such famously strict Islamic rules associated with them? Well, Prophet Muhammad provided exact instructions here. The protocol is incredibly precise. If a dog licks your bowl, wash the vessel 7 times and use soil for one of those washes. But notice what is absolutely critical here. The ruling is triggered specifically when a dog licks a vessel. Major Islamic scholars like Imam al-Nawawi, Ibn Qudama, and Ibn Taymiyyah have extensively analyzed this. They point out that the Hadith doesn't say the entire dog is impure. The strict hygienic boundary is actually localized primarily to the dog's mouth and its saliva. And you know what? Science completely validates this theological boundary. Modern CDC and WHO data reveal exactly what is lurking in that saliva. We're talking about bacteria like Capnocytophaga and Pastorella. Now, these are perfectly normal for the dog to carry, but when transmitted to humans, especially children, the elderly, or anyone with a compromised immune system, they can cause severe, sometimes life-threatening infections. And of course, there is rabies, which is almost always fatal once symptoms appear and is spread directly through saliva. So Islam's strong emphasis on cleanliness here, it's essentially an advanced preventative health measure. But here is the real scientific bombshell regarding that soil requirement. Scientists found that soil actually holds profound antimicrobial properties. Remember step 2 from a moment ago, wash it once with soil? For centuries, people were probably wondering, why soil?
Why not just use water for all 7 washes? Well, modern microbiology provides a fascinating insight. Major antibiotics like streptomycin were actually discovered from bacteria living naturally right there in the soil. While we can't say with 100% certainty that this is the sole reason for the prophetic instruction, it is undeniably extraordinary that a 7th century hygiene practice perfectly mirrors the antimicrobial realities discovered by modern science.
Let's move in to Section 2, the rule of mercy, the thirsty dog. Listen, it is so absolutely vital that we don't confuse a boundary for cleanliness with a license for cruelty. In fact, the sacred law demands the exact opposite. A famous hadith tells of a woman who received Allah's complete forgiveness simply because she climbed into a well to give water to a desperately thirsty dog. This is easily one of the most powerful stories in the Islamic tradition. This woman saw a dog suffering from severe thirst, literally licking the wet mud because it couldn't find water. She took it upon herself to climb down a well, fill her shoe with water, and bring it all the way back up to the dog. The Prophet Muhammad explicitly stated that Allah forgave her because of that act. Just think about that. A simple act of hydrating a dog was enough to wipe away her sins. This proves definitively that Islam teaches profound mercy and kindness toward these animals.
So notice the beautiful synthesis here. On one hand, we absolutely acknowledge the spiritual and physical boundary where angels of mercy avoid homes with dogs kept unnecessarily indoors. There's that well-documented incident where the angel Jibreel, or Gabriel, delayed a visit to the prophet, later explaining that angels of mercy do not enter houses containing dogs or certain images. That sets a clear, firm rule for the indoor domestic space. But juxtaposed right against that is the strict mandate for compassion. You don't bring them into your living room unnecessarily, for sure, but you absolutely must treat them with deep kindness and respect outside of it.
Ultimately, Islam's approach isn't some simple binary of hate or love. It's a deeply logical balance of profound mercy, practical utility, and hygienic wisdom. The whole thing rests on 3 pillars. First, mercy with wisdom. We recognize their incredible abilities and we utilize them for hunting and protection. Second, compassion with boundaries. We save them from thirst and treat them incredibly well, but we don't blur the lines of our designated hygienic living spaces. And third, faith with cleanliness. We respect Allah's creation, absolutely, but we rigorously wash our vessels to protect our health. It's just a perfectly balanced system.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this thought to chew on. How does embracing both scientific truth and spiritual boundaries transform your understanding of the world? Because when we look past simple rumors and actually study the texts alongside modern biology, we find a worldview that is deeply respectful of nature, rigorously protective of human health, and just endlessly compassionate. Think about how that balance applies not just to dogs, but to all the incredible creatures we share this planet with. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I really encourage you to keep exploring these fascinating spaces where wisdom, science, and mercy intersect.